Luka, I wanted to ask you a question about Real Madrid. Your last post on Twitter is Hala Madrid, and I wanted to ask you what Real Madrid means to you. How much of a fan are you? How much do you follow them now, this season?
Following them every time. It's basketball, obviously, and it's football. I grew up there. He taught me everything. So it's a part of my life. You can call it second, third home, whatever you can call it. But I learned a lot of stuff there, and especially it gave me a way to be here right now. So I always appreciate that 100%.
Do you have any thoughts on how their season is going and how Mbappe is getting integrated into that team?
Oh yeah, obviously it could be better. But when you get a guy like him, it takes time to get used to it. But we'll figure out.
Look at tonight.
What's up, you beautiful Madridistas? This is Kiyan Sobhani. We're going to do something a little bit different today on the Managing Madrid podcast. That was me asking Luka Doncic a question about Real Madrid just a couple days ago at the Mavs-Spurs game at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. That was a ton of fun. So I'd say today's episode is a niche within a niche within a niche within a niche. As you guys know, I love Luka Doncic. We all do. Many of you guys listening, actually, if you clicked on this episode, you love Luka Doncic too. That's why you're here. I would say the niches of our podcast are broken down this way: football, Real Madrid, nerdy Real Madrid, analytics, deeper tactical discussions, and then this is the ultimate niche within the niche within the niche, which is Luka Doncic, former Real Madrid player Luka Doncic. We obviously covered him quite a bit during the NBA Finals last year, so you're not completely surprised by this episode, but I think this is going to be a yearly thing for me now that I got a taste of it. I want to see Luka Doncic play at least once a year, and I want to get in some Real Madrid content with him. And I thought this was an excellent foot in the door. Got a chance to get to know the Mavs PR really well, establish some good connections, some good friendships, and we got our foot in the door with our first Luka Doncic question in the press conference. So that was fantastic. This is going to be an annual thing, I think. Thank God for the international break. The only good thing about all these international breaks is that it gave us time to do some stuff we really wanted to do that was outside of the football side of things. So coming up, a really long discussion with my good friend, Michael Sartain, who lives in Las Vegas. And I stopped by Vegas before going to Dallas, and we just talked about an hour about Luka Doncic, the future of sports media. And as you guys know, I was very vocal about my opinion with the whole Zach Lowe getting fired from ESPN thing. So we dove into that in the future of sports media. We talked about Doncic, obviously, extensively, some other basketball stuff. And quite frankly, with Michael, that conversation could have gone easily 8 hours, but I think we could have done a 24-hour stream. Alas, we had the studio for about an hour and change. So I hope you enjoy it. Michael's a good friend. He's got his own course he's selling, and it's an amazing guy to talk to about all things, not just basketball. So we had a lot in common, and we focused on basketball, but yeah, just a great guy to have a conversation with. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. Let's dive in. The greatness of Luka Doncic, Managing Madrid episode. Let's get it.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
All right, guys, welcome to the Managing Madrid podcast. We're doing a little something different today. It's a little bit off-brand, but not quite off-brand. It's an honor for me to bring in this next guest, someone who means a lot to me. Actually, unbeknownst to our listeners, is a huge reason why our podcast has grown because of his mentorship. Michael Sartain is in the house. Michael, welcome to the show, man. How you doing,
man? You're living my dream. Like, I used to work in sports radio 30 years ago, And that's what I wanted to do until I got into joined the military. But that's what I've always wanted. I wish if I could just follow around the Dallas Mavericks all the time, like that would have been what I'd be doing right now.
You should just do it.
Yeah, it'd be great.
You should
right?
just do it.
Yeah.
I know you have an amazing lifestyle, but there's another level, bro. There's another level where you just get really nerdy and talk about basketball every
That's what I'm
day.
saying.
And
Is that where the
that's
girls
it.
are?
You just stay home. Yeah.
That's how you get the girls?
There's
Yeah.
no girls, actually.
Okay.
Listen, man, our listeners are actually, like, you and I have a lot in common.
Yeah.
We could probably have this camera on for a 24-hour stream
Yeah.
and easily fill up time. But we have wildly different listener kind of like audiences.
Sure.
So I'm just trying to bridge the gap here. So our listeners know that we are huge Luka Doncic fans.
Yes.
We love him to death. He's an ex-Real Madrid player. And we were also very mad that he went third in the draft. He should have been number one. But we were vindicated about that. The whole world knows that now. And you are not just one of the best basketball minds I know. I think you are way better than some of those talking heads on ESPN.
I appreciate that.
So I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. But you are also more specifically a Dallas guy.
Yeah,
like you're not a bandwagon guy like us.
I've been following the Mavericks for 41 years now, I think. That's how it
Jeez.
was. Yeah, I remember stuff in the 81-82 season. I'm actually friends with Jim Jackson. He was a point guard they drafted in the early, or the shooting guard they drafted in the early 90s. He and I are friends. And I've loved the Mavericks. I've loved him before they had Cuban. I love him when Donald Carter was the owner. It's really interesting. So you talk about being drafted third. Do you understand the story why that happened?
Maybe not.
So DeAndre Ayton was the first pick in the draft. He was
Right.
the center who went to Phoenix. And
Yeah.
the reason why is because he is from Phoenix. And like that's why he was from Arizona and they just thought it would be a good fit. And they already had a two guard or they had a point guard. They just didn't see where Luka would fit. The reason why Marvin Bagley went second was because I forgot what the guy's name. Who's the GM for the Serbian guy who the GM for he used to play center for the Lakers. Why not?
Vlade Divac.
Vlade Divac.
Yeah.
Traded for Kobe.
Yeah.
He doesn't like Luka's father or something to that effect. It was like some personal vendetta he had. Now, I'll tell you why the Mavericks took Luka third. I don't know if a lot of people realize this. Donnie Nelson encouraged the Mavericks. He was the GM of the Mavericks at the time. Encouraged the Mavericks to take Giannis Antetokounmpo in the draft, and they took Shane Larkin instead. And it was a huge, obviously, I mean, you couldn't do any worse than that.
Yeah.
And if you guys remember Giannis, when he first came into the league, he looked like a 12-year-old version of himself. Like, had no upper body muscle. He was tiny. His head was smaller. He looked completely different than he did now. Anybody would have taken Giannis first. But because they missed on this player, this European phenom, that's why when Donnie came to Mark Cuban in the 19 draft and said, you've got to take this kid. There's no doubt about it. He's going to be generational. That they took him third, that Atlanta took him third, and then swapped trades for Trae Young. It's really funny if you redraft the whole thing. There was a consideration for a while when Trae Young got to the second round that maybe Trae Young was as good as Luka. Nobody thinks that anymore.
No.
Trae Young is a complete sieve on defense, and he really doesn't create shots for his teammates anywhere to the level that Luka does.
Yeah.
Luka is so unique. And the only other player that I've seen be able to do this was like James Harden, his MVP season, where he can go that slow. I've never seen a player use that little energy and get to the basket anytime he wants. If you want to know, like, the number one reason he is so generational is so think about Allen Iverson. What would Iverson do? He would cross you up and he would create so much space that literally if you tried to grab him with two hands, you wouldn't be able to catch him. He was too fast. And when you think about Michael Jordan, he was just so physically lean and strong and so explosive that if you got in front of him, he would jump over you and dunk on you. Shaquille O'Neal was a 7'1", 340, and so he would turn and without committing an offensive foul, he'd put you in the third row and he would dunk on you. And Kobe Bryant was a combination of athleticism and flexibility and a skill. You think about, different players. Steph Curry, his skill set to be able to shoot from distance. Luka, while he has all those skills, he's not a top-tier elite at any of them. The thing is, though, I've never seen a player get anywhere he wants on the court anytime he wants with so little energy expended. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%.
He puts guys on his back like no one I've ever seen except for Chris Paul and James Harden. When you see him play, he has the widest stance I've ever seen. He almost like doing a quarter splits, and then he's got the ball down here to keep away from the guy, and he's always making the right pass. And I was reading something about his deceleration statistics. So, like, while he's not the fastest player in the NBA, he is the fastest player at stopping in the NBA. So he'll get a guy on his hip and he'll stop, and you'll see guys pass by him, and then he'll just shoot like simple layups. And because of that, I've just never seen a guy. I bet you if you look at like calories expended, I've never seen a guy score 45 points and use so little energy.
It looks effortless.
It does
Yeah.
because he's not quicking you to the basket. He's not powering you to the basket. He's not speeding you to the basket, and he's not bullying you to the basket. Look, LeBron is one dribble to the two dribbles to the left, and he's so strong. He's 6'9" with a 42-inch vertical. LeBron has no creativity at the rim. If you watch him, he is trying to dunk on you every single time, right? Whereas if you watch Iverson and Kobe, they have some creativity. Even Michael Jordan, they had creativity at the rim. Luka, he puts you on his hip and then he stops and then he pump fakes, and you're so far out of the play when he goes to score. It's just the most basic, like elementary school scoring that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I also don't think we've seen a guy since Magic be able to pass in the half court like his. LeBron's obviously amazing. He's a tremendous full court player. The Mavericks are the slowest team in the NBA because all their usage comes through one player, Luka. And because they're so slow, they don't have a lot of half-court opportunities. But he's probably the most efficient half-court weapon in the entire NBA. And I would include Giannis because somebody's got to get Giannis the ball. And I would include Jokic because someone has to get Jokic the ball. I think Luka is probably the most effective player I've ever seen at that. So he's almost like a bigger, slower James Harden, but a better passer and a better rebounder and probably a better scorer. Like he's just a better, bigger version of James Harden, but he doesn't try to muscle guys to the basket. It's really interesting to watch.
Do you see, so James Harden had a quote in the summertime, I think it was, like leading up to training camp, and he was like, see, Luka plays like me and he got to the finals. And I'm like, no, Luka's on another level to you right now at this stage of your career.
Yeah.
Luka does things that I would do against kids on a Nerf hoop.
Yeah.
Except he's doing it against NBA dudes.
Yeah.
It's like the best players in the world.
He's in control. A lot of people will compare him to James Harden. You know who I compare him to is a really interesting one is actually Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback for the Chiefs. If you watch him when he does these crazy things, he's in total control.
Right.
He's like, if you watch, and by the way, Patrick Mahomes, also his deceleration stats are off the charts. Like he is able to stop and make guys miss at a rate that other players can't. And so it's like he makes these crazy throws, but for him it wasn't difficult because he played shortstop in college. When I watch Mahomes, it actually reminds me a lot of Luka. How he's doing these double fakes, like he'll fake the ball right by a guy's ear, he'll turn around and he'll throw that kind of thing. But he's doing this in a game, and it's like there's no nervousness to him because he's so. When we talk about a ball dominant player, we've never seen anyone like him before. I believe his usage stats are like all-time highs, right? As a Mavericks fan, he has the ball coming up almost every time. And I think the development for him, the two weaknesses that he has is, number one, his problems with the referees, which go through cycles. Sometimes he has them, and I maybe that's a European thing. I don't know what it is, but he feels. I knew when he had a serious problem, it wasn't actually him getting all the technical fouls. It's when he would go up and they blow the whistle, the ball would go in, and he would still look at the referee like, what? Like he didn't in his mind couldn't even accept that he got the call. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Watch it next time he gets fouled, he still does like this and looks at the referee and like, no, you got the call. Like, why are you still pissed?
Yeah.
But it's such a Pavlovian response for him to yell at the referees anytime there's contact that he doesn't know how to stop doing it. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, contrary to what a lot of people believe, Luka is a good defender. He's an above average defender. When he locks in. When he locks in. There's a bunch of stats, especially he led the NBA. He was second in the NBA in steals in the playoffs last year. And he knows how to play the passing lanes really, really well. As a post defender, he's elite. By the way, James Harden's an absolutely terrible defender, but in the post, for some reason, James Harden's really, really good. I think it's like lower body strength. I think that's what it has to do with.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is when his usage rate is outrageous. And for those of you who don't know, if you're watching European football, you don't know a ton about basketball. Usage rate, the statistics means how many possessions end with me either shooting or passing the ball to someone who shoots or getting fouled and going to the free throw line. And in comparison to the rest of the team. So there's a total number of possessions. Let's say the Mavericks are the slowest team in the league. So this is 85 possessions a game. And then let's say Luka has the ball to finish 65 of those 85 times. That would be like an outrageously high usage rate. Only LeBron is even close to that level of usage rate. Because most players who distribute the ball don't also lead the team in scoring, but Luka does both. So in that case, with that like outrageously high usage rate, what you're going to see is he has to bring the ball up. If you play basketball, you know that's probably the most exhausting thing, is to bring the ball up against a pressing defender. It's even more exhausting than running around without the ball. And what did the Mavericks do in their front office to fix that, which is genius? Kyrie is obviously the first example of someone who can bring the ball up without Luka being there.
Yeah.
But the other one they went out and got Dinwiddie, which is a really great move. And they got several other point guards on the team who can bring the ball up and take pressure off of him. And the other thing that they did was, where Luka is generational, is he is amongst, like, I believe top 3 all time in creating open shots for other players. There's a metric that they use where they use artificial intelligence software to look at the distance between the shooter and how far away the nearest defender is. And I think it's in excess of 4 or 5 feet, where that's considered a wide open shot. Luka creates more wide open shots for players than any player in history. Now, obviously we shoot more threes in the NBA now, so the a player coming off the corner to come double it takes so much longer to do than it did, probably in Michael Jordan's day, where you didn't see anywhere near shooting that many threes in a game. No. Because of that, what I see now is the Klay Thompson signing is being an incredibly efficient 3-point shooter. And by the way, a plus defender. I've been watching in these last couple games. I thought he was going to have trouble defending. He does not. He's still a plus defender. I think that's a huge advantage. But here's the other thing. I'm not a huge fan of Mark Cuban.
Okay.
Mark Cuban did not draft Dirk. I don't know if a lot of people know that.
What was the story behind the Dirk draft?
Okay, so it was a similar situation. I watched Dirk play in high school. He would play against the under 18 team of the United States, and I watched this
dominate?
game. No, he was going between the legs, spin moves, like dunking on people.
I love that guy.
And I remember there's a story of Charles Barkley going up to him. He goes, like, where are you going to college? He goes, oh, I'm joining the German army. He goes, you need to go to Auburn. Like, we need to get you to go to Auburn.
Right.
Dirk was when he first came to the league, they had him playing the 3. He wasn't playing the 4. But he can't guard small forward, so they quickly moved him to the 4. And out of nowhere, he just became an amazing rebounder. Dirk became a good player in the NBA because they saw the raw talent.
Right.
Luka was first team All NBA, I believe his first or second year. Luka was the only comparable thing I would say to that is either Tim Duncan or LeBron, where he came out exactly as good.
Yeah.
Like Tim Duncan was the first or second best player in the league when he first came. A lot of people don't remember because he has kind of a boring play style. But Tim Duncan was going to shut you down. He was going to lead your team in rebounding, and he was going to shoot 55, 60% from the field. And every time you fouled him, he was going to make free throws. He was a serious problem. Luka's the only guy I remember coming out, and he just like there was one quote he had that I thought was amazing, where he said it's easier to score in the NBA than it was for him to score when he's playing at Real Madrid. And like a lot of NBA people are like, that's insulting. But no, it's not insulting,
right?
Because no one in the NBA can't shoot threes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The 12th guy on your roster can shoot threes, at least wide open threes at 40%. So that means because the floor space, for those of you who watch FIBA, the NBA line is 23 feet 9 inches. So it's about 1.5 feet further than the FIBA line. And because of that, it seems like you'd have less scoring, but no, what happens is double teams take longer to happen because the floor is so spread out. Just imagine if you played soccer, you played a European football, but the field was a mile wide.
Yeah.
Imagine how far the offense could take the ball around. It's like that. It's like that kind of situation. So it'd be very hard to double team someone if you had something like that. So that's the type of situation with watching him. But I'm just so impressed. Well, anyway, back to the Cuban thing. Mark Cuban really screwed up after the Mavericks won the championship in 2011.
Okay.
He let Tyson Chandler go for nothing. He ends up becoming Defensive Player of the Year the next year for the New York Knicks because he was trying to sign Dwight Howard. Mark Cuban has always been like shooting for the stars and then hurting the team because of it. Mark Cuban also has this horrible problem, whether it's Nick Van Exel or if it was Antoine Walker, Antoine Jamison, Chris Kaman, of getting players who could only play on one side of the court. He cared nothing about defense. I don't know why he's like this. Maybe somewhere he believes that the statistical anomaly that this will work. What if you look at the Warriors 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, that Warriors team that won those championships, they were able to win because they could shoot threes, but they could also play defense. Whereas Don Nelson would just try to shoot threes and try to run up and down the court. That whole plan didn't work. And Mark Cuban, who, by the way, is not officially the GM of the Mavericks, was clearly making a lot of their front office moves. And he would go get Vince Carter, and he would go get these players that were like names that were big names that he knew could score points.
Right.
And the Mavericks would be always perennially the worst team in the league in rebounding and defense.
Right.
Because he would do this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they hire Nico Harris, and the Adelsons buy the team. And out of nowhere, the Mavericks trade for Gafford, and then they go get P.J. Washington. I can tell you unequivocally, and they signed Derek Jones Jr. to play guard for them. I can tell you unequivocally, had Mark Cuban been in charge, this is when I knew Mark Cuban wasn't in charge anymore. You understand? He was telling people, even after the Adelsons bought the team, he was telling them, nothing's going to change. I'm still going to be, working on player personnel. When I saw them trade for Gafford, I'm like, Gafford plays defense. That doesn't make any sense. When I saw them trade for P.J. Washington, I'm like, P.J. Washington will shut down a 4. This guy's a really good defender. When I saw them sign Derek Jones Jr. and Dante Exum, I was like, Dante Exum has a ridiculously high, per 48 minutes, his steals per game is way out of this. It's crazy high. In fact, that's the best thing he does. Exum is a defender. I was like, Mark Cuban is not in charge of this team anymore. These are defenders. This is how the Mavericks won a championship in 2011. They had one guy, Dirk, who really wasn't a great defender. He was a decent post defender, really good rebounder, and they surrounded him with Sean Marion. They put Tyson Chandler next to him. They put Jason Kidd, who could really defend back then, Caron Butler. They put defenders all around Dirk. Yeah. So it was one guy who literally was a mismatch no matter who was guarding him, especially if it was Chris Bosh, who couldn't guard my grandma. They would literally have one awesome offensive player and then 4 really good defensive players. You watch when the Sixers went to the finals in 2001, similar situation where they had Allen Iverson, his usage rate was through the roof, and they had Eric Snow right there, and they had Dikembe Mutombo, and they had 4 guys who were elite defenders and one guy who could just score anytime he wanted to, right?
I'm a Raptors guy, so that season was heartbreaking. That was Vince, game winner, game 7, in and out.
Yeah. So when you see what happened, as soon as Cuban lost majority holdership of the team, they started making Nico Harrison, who's he was a former Nike executive. He's now the GM of the Mavericks. He starts making these incredible moves. And what he does, what I really love, if you guys want to watch this, and I know this is a big thing in EPL. I like keeping up with EPL a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that they will go rent players who play on teams that aren't going to make the playoffs, or they'll send a guy who's really good on their team. Real Madrid will loan a player to another team.
Yeah.
We don't in the NFL. Obviously, we don't do anything
Doesn't
like that.
Exist, yeah.
NBA, we don't do anything similar. We'll loan them to the G League. That's about it. G League Ignite or one of the G League franchises. That's all we'll do. Because the other difference is we have full guaranteed contracts and we have a salary cap. You guys don't have a salary cap. I don't believe
there is salary caps.
Is there?
Yeah.
Is it per player or is it just in general?
So it's based on there's so many different leagues in European football that it's hard to keep track because there are different rules within different leagues.
But La
Liga has a salary cap and it's based on the annual revenue projections of each team. So every team.
So it's just like the NFL. Is it a hard cap or can you go above it?
It's a hard cap.
Wow, I did not know this. Cap. Is this a new thing or it was always like this?
It's always like this, but it's not really. I don't know, for some reason not talked about enough in the dialogue.
Does every team get to the cap? I can't imagine all the teams in Spain spend the same amount of money.
No, they don't. I mean, so Real Madrid can sign infinitely more players than anyone else.
In the NFL and in the NBA, I believe you have to spend 90% of the cap per year.
You have to.
Yes, you have to spend 90. Yeah, it's a thing with a collective bargaining agreement. But in the NFL, you can't. It's a hard cap. You cannot go above 100%. There is no cap for players. In the NBA, there is a cap for players. So with someone like Luka, because you can't honestly pay him enough, he's always going to get max deals, max years.
Yeah, of course.
Same thing with LeBron. LeBron, Giannis, Jokic. There's no contract negotiation with them. They get max deal, max years. There's no question about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
For other players, and also it makes trades easier because you have full 100% guaranteed contracts and you can switch players. That's why you see so many trades in the NBA. Where you don't see it in professional. When I say football, I mean American football.
Yeah.
You don't see it in American football because the contracts are not guaranteed.
Yeah.
You do see guaranteed contracts in American baseball, but there is no salary cap, and that is not that. You see crazy numbers there. You will see one team, and I'm sorry, you see this probably in the EPL too, or in La Liga or Bundesliga, where you'll have a team spending 3 times as much as another team.
Yeah,
you only see that in baseball. In our American sports leagues, we have revenue sharing.
Yes. Yeah.
Except for baseball. Well, baseball may have it too, but the way it works is in professional and NBA basketball, the teams that go over the cap, which right now would be like Denver and Boston, they're at the second apron.
Yeah.
The money that they pay over the cap, they have to pay 3.5 times that amount. I'm somewhere around that area back to the league, which is now distributed amongst all the teams that did not go above the cap. So if I'm a team that's not very good, saying then I actually get money from the league, which offsets whatever losses that I'm going to take because of ticket sales.
Right.
But home playoff games are still mine, and merchandising is still mine. So
Right.
that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a socialist system in our professional leagues here in the United States, where it's like it's revenue sharing. So that's the reason why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can win the championship one, or the Milwaukee Bucks can
There's
win
more
the champ-
parity overall.
Way
yeah.
more, or a team like
Yeah.
Dallas. I mean, Dallas
Yeah.
is. Dallas is the fourth largest area in the United States. Dallas-Fort Worth area has got 6 million people, but we can still compete with Los Angeles. And
Yes.
the reason why is because of the salary
Because
cap.
of this, yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to bring it back full circle to something you said earlier about how NBA ready Luka was.
Yes.
Coming in like all the NBA team first or second year.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that we complain about on the podcast. ESPN, like in all these kind of draft projection websites and publications, we're talking about Luka might not be ready because he doesn't play in the NCAA.
Yeah.
He plays in the EuroLeague. And
Yeah.
our thing was like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
It's the fucking
I
EuroLeague.
felt exactly the same way.
He was the EuroLeague MVP, and not only was he dominating, he was a leader.
Yeah.
Like they would look to him, and he's like this 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
That is way more NBA ready than.
Yeah. So I
they underrated Europe. I think.
So I totally understood why this is. The reason why this happens is because you have more Anglo players coming from Europe. Like in the United States, we don't know the difference. We don't know the difference between a Serbian, a Brit, and a Frenchman. Like,
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
we're Americans. Like to us, Luka looks like a white dude from New Jersey. Like we can't tell. He looks like 8 Mile for all we know. And so he comes in here, and so many Europeans have come into the NBA and have been poor defenders. They've gotten beat up physically. We've seen this often. Historically, that's what's happened with NBA players.
Yeah.
Where you didn't have like traditional, like very, very big physical European, African players. Yes. I mean, like Mutombo and Akeem Olajuwon. But for the most part, we had very few European players come in and be strong defensive players and not get pushed around. And so because of that transition, the belief was, well, then the FIBA game is soft, the European game is soft, and of course it's anything but. You guys don't have the double team rules we have. You can hack the shit out of people. Tim Duncan did not want to play in the Olympics because he was getting double teamed every time he touched the ball. It's just such a different game. It's closer to college basketball, but in American college basketball, there's such a drop off in talent. Where like it's almost, if a player plays 4 years of American NCAA basketball, he's not very good. No one will.
He would have been drafted.
He would have been
sooner,
drafted
yeah.
unless we're talking about like a Tim Duncan. There's very few exceptions. Where like I remember when Shane Battier played 4 years. He went later on, played and won
Yeah.
a championship with the Heat. When
Good
Shane
player.
Battier played 4 years with the Duke, I was like, oh, he must not be very good. If
Right.
he's going to play 4 years at Duke,
Yeah.
he's not that good of a player. Whereas Kobe comes out at 18 and he crushes everyone. Same thing with Kevin Garnett. Even Moses Malone, the first guy to come out as a teenager, or first guy to come out as 18. When actually he wasn't the first guy, but he was one of the first guys, or Sean Kemp or someone like that. When we saw those guys, they were ready to come out. And I think the question was a level of physicality. In the United States, we just have a double standard where we just don't expect, in the NFL, there are 2 white cornerbacks in the entire league. For something like going on 10 years, going all the way back to like Jason Sehorn, there wasn't a single white cornerback in the entire league. This country, we just had like this belief that our best athletes were going to be American black basketball players. Those were always going to be the best players. And now when you look and you see, Giannis he's of African descent. His family's from Africa, but like he's Greek. And then you see the same thing with Jokic is Serbian, and then you see the situation with.
Is there an American in the top 5 in the NBA right now?
Well, ironically, it would be Embiid. He is an American now. He has an American passport.
That's cheating.
You remember he was going to play for Spain, and then they started booing him. But he is
France, I think it was.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was going to play for France.
Yeah.
That's right. He's from Cameroon. He speaks French. And he. So yeah, that would be one. In the top 5, gosh, I'm trying to think. Who is the best American player now that isn't LeBron? Man, this is tough. I'd have to go
Anthony
back.
Edwards?
See, Anthony Edwards has a serious problem with consistency. This year he hasn't. This year he's been incredible. It could be Anthony Edwards. I don't know if he's there yet. I wouldn't put him on the same level. To me, the only possible discussion you can have about the best player in the world is going to be Jokic, Giannis, and Luka. There's no one that really ever fits in there. You can't say Embiid anymore. After some of the stuff he's done, Availability is an
We got to
ability.
see it with Embiid. Like we
Yeah.
got to at some point be like, okay, you're a good player. Can we just at least see it in the playoffs?
So theoretically,
Can you stay healthy?
So theoretically, if Embiid turned into Shaq and said, "I'm going to play in the paint all the time and just beat the crap out of people," yeah, you're right, because he'd be going to the foul line. He would be incredible. Embiid would be the best player in the world. The things he can do defensively, the way he moves, 100%, I would say that. But you can't put him in the consideration because he anytime he deals with any level of physicality, same thing with Karl Anthony Towns. Anytime they deal with any physicality, what do? They back away from the basket. Meanwhile, Luka, who's like the highest usage rate player in the league, what is he constantly doing if you give him space? If you come and play up on him, he'll go to the basket. He's in the lane more than anybody. He's in the lane more than a power forward or a center at this point. And he always makes the right decision. The Mavericks do 0 post-up plays. All they do is run pick and roll to Gafford or Lively, where they throw an alley-oop dunk, or it's a corner 3 because one of the corner guys comes to help, and Luka just finds him. He doesn't even see him. He doesn't have to. He'll throw the ball behind his head, and he'll hit somebody in the corner, and the Mavericks are loaded with guys who can shoot 40% from 22 feet. For those of you who don't know, again, the corners, the short corners in the NBA are 22 feet even. The actual round the top of the three-point line is 23 feet 9 inches. So 9 inches at the top and at the wings, and 22 feet at the corners. So when you realize that, like, he makes everyone wrong. Offensively in a half court, I would say Luka's 1. He's the best player I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He is
Ever.
And I would say the thing about Jokic is that you can exploit him defensively. And I don't like Luka. If he's locked in, you really can't. But Jokic is also a really good defender. It's tough, man. It's really tough to say. Jokic needs someone to bring the ball. You can't have Jokic bring up the ball all the time. You can have Luka bring up the ball the entire game and slow the pace of the game down. Giannis still needs people to get him the ball, and he still has a lack of efficiency shooting threes. But when he gets a full head of steam towards the basket, he's the best player, and he's a better defender than any of those guys that I just mentioned previously.
No question.
So I would say, is Luka's in the argument for the best player in the world right now? I think he will be the best player in the world because of the way he plays and because of the way the NBA has shaped up, with so many guys coming out being able to shoot a three. And he benefits off that. So I'm really interested. And also, like, surrounding him with other defenders, I think is a great idea. And then lowering his usage rate by using Dinwiddie and Kyrie Irving to take the ball out of his hands so he can play defense.
Yeah.
Once he shows that he's an above-average defender, you know what stops happening? They stop calling him up. What Boston did in the finals is they would so they figure out whoever Luka's guarding, he would come set a screen on Tatum or Brown, whichever one, and then Tatum or Brown would go at Luka, causing him to commit a foul. And often Luka wouldn't even, he knows he's going to commit a foul. He would just let the guy blow by. You saw the ridiculous blow by numbers for Luka. It's not because he's a bad defender. It's like, I'm the only chance our team has to score. And so he doesn't want to get into foul trouble.
Yeah. So if you speak to Mavericks fans now, I mean, they all obviously acknowledge Luka's greatness. The two complaints that they would have about him is, one, what you mentioned earlier, which is the complaining and all that stuff. The second thing is physical shape.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on that? Because, so we had this guy at Real Madrid. His name was Eden Hazard. Mm-hmm. We spent a bunch of money on him. He flopped. Part of the reason he flopped was because he basically took off seasons off.
Yeah.
Did not keep himself in shape. Was very vocal about, I drink beer, I eat burgers.
Yeah.
I'm not getting paid for the summer.
Yeah.
Which obviously is super unprofessional, and his body broke down. Luka has this thing where he doesn't look like this jack basketball player. Do you think it hurts him, or do you think maybe it's just part of maybe what makes him so good? I don't know if that makes sense, but is there another level he needs to go to with his professionalism?
It reminds me of the really hot girl who eats like trash and drinks and does a bunch of drugs.
Gets away with it.
But she gets away with it because she's like 20, 21 years old. Mm-hmm.
Catches up to you.
He doesn't know yet what's happening to him. And so, by the way, Anthony Edwards has a similar problem where he eats like crap, and then it deals with his conditioning. The thing about Luka is, I'm trying to describe him for anyone who'd never seen Luka. He's this 6'7" dude with like a normally proportioned upper body, but his lower body is humongous. Like his hips and his legs are big. Like they're really big. When you look, he looks like I'm trying to think of another player that looks like this, but his lower body is huge. Actually, Yao Ming was like this. If you looked at Yao Ming had these big legs and these like little arms. Luka doesn't have little arms, and he's not fat. He's still in better shape than 99% of humanity.
Of course.
The problem is because he has to bring the ball up so much, and because he's like, pushing 230, that makes for those that'd be like 103 kilos, something like that. Because he's doing that, it wears on him, and he has a hard time. It's not just the fatigue; it's the health. You notice there's always something wrong with his knee. There's always something wrong with his ankle. There's always something wrong with his shoulder. He's always got tape on his shoulder. And I think it's the dinging up that happens, one, of him attacking the basket as much as he is. But also, you're right, it is probably a conditioning issue. And the only thing I can say is I've seen hundreds of athletes before him, when they got older, come to the realization. Derrick Henry is a great example. Do you know who Derrick Henry is? Derrick Henry is, just for those of you who don't know, if you guys ever just look up highlights of Derrick Henry, he is the running back for the Baltimore Ravens. Okay. He's been in the league 8 years. Running backs in the NFL make it about 2.5 years, and then they're out. Running back it's just a violent collision sport. Just imagine, like, he's a rugby player, but he gets the ball every time, and he has to run 20 miles an hour, and ramming into he gets hit. So their careers are the shortest of any NBA NFL player. Derrick Henry's been in the league 8 years. He's leading the league in rushing. He's probably the fastest running back in the league, and he's 6'3" and weighs 247 pounds. It makes no sense. But you know what? He only eats after 5 p.m. He doesn't eat any fried food. Like he has this he spends $250,000 a year just on health. And because of
He's doing that intermittent fasting.
Yeah, intermittent fasting.
Gregor Gallagher would be proud.
Yeah. But it's something I could also see Luka doing in the future. I could see Luka doing intermittent fasting. I could see him. Maybe choosing a paleo workout. Counting his macros, stuff like that.
Plant-based. I think Kyrie went plant-based at some point.
Yeah,
I don't know if he still is.
But Kyrie also doesn't use any physicality. He doesn't really use physicality to stop people. There's another thing I meant to go off. Kyrie and Luka, because they are probably in the league 1 and 2 best at getting anywhere they want on the court.
Yeah.
No matter who's guarding them. Like, the thing with Luka, I think a lot of people don't understand. It's not that good defenders slow him down. Good defenders don't even bother him. Like, it really makes no difference who's in front of him, because he does this thing where he puts the defender on his shoulder, and he uses the off arm while he's dribbling as well as any player I've ever seen. And he uses the off arm every single time, but where he doesn't get called for an offensive foul. So for those who know, you can't stick the arm out and you can't hook with the elbow. Luka does this gentle thing where he pushes your arm down and he goes by you. And Kyrie does the same thing too, where he's got the arm out like this. As long as the elbow isn't expressed or you don't dislodge the defender, you're allowed to do that. Those guys do it, and it gives you an incredible advantage when you're able to do this, because the rules in the NBA that changed back in the 90s, you can't hand check players on when you're playing defense. Back when Michael Jordan was playing, you could like literally ride a guy and put your hand on his hip the whole time way down,
crazy.
And then come swap the ball. It was crazy.
It's a miracle that Michael Jordan just didn't die during that era.
Yeah, if you watch some of those plays back in the early 90s, he was getting clobbered. It was
especially
crazy.
Like that was the only thing you could do with him.
Yeah, it was so crazy. So with Luka, he's better with the offhand, him and Harden, than anybody I've ever seen. And Luka is as good as Chris Paul. So Chris Paul will do a thing where Chris Paul will be dribbling the ball, somehow will come set up the screen, and then the guy will go over the screen. His defender will go over the screen to chase Chris Paul. Chris Paul, instead of going to the basket, will stop, and the guy will be stuck on Chris Paul's back.
Yeah.
Chris will be dribbling like this with the defender on his back. The defender can't come around either way without committing a foul. So now if you think about it, it's now 4-on-5. The defender behind Chris Paul can't do anything. Luka does this thing too, where he puts out after the screen and roll. If you go over the screen, Luka will put a guy on his back. If you go under the screen, Luka loves to shoot threes. He led the NBA in three-point attempts and I believe makes last year. He led not in percentage, but he led it in makes. He had more makes than Klay did last year. And Klay, that's all he does is pretty much at this point shoot threes. So his whole thing is making the defense wrong. So he makes you wrong by, if you come to guard him, he's going to put one arm on you. He's going to dribble slowly to the basket. If the double comes from wherever, you're leaving one of his three-point shooters open. He sees them without even seeing them. Number two, you're going to ride him to the basket. He's going to stop, pump fake. You're going to go off into the third row, and he'll just shoot right here, or he'll get fouled. Or if you go under the screen, he's going to shoot high enough percentage, 38, 39%, 37%, somewhere around there, to where he's going to make you pay. And so the defense is always wrong no matter what you do. And the only thing, like I said before, is they've got to lower his usage rate so that he's a plus defender when they get to the playoffs. But yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing watching him play.
Yeah, Travis, extend this podcast. We're going 8 hours. Yeah, we're going 8 hours. Yeah. Let's bring it back to Kyrie.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember this, but I think, when was it that the Nets formed their super team? 2022?
No, I thought it wasn't it before that?
I don't know.
When they formed it? Gosh, I can't remember. I have to go back and look. But yeah, it was obviously.
So, irrespective.
Oh, you remember the discussion we had? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, you correctly predicted that
Yeah, it wasn't going to work.
it was going to fall apart.
I'm not going to. I said beta males. That was the wrong term. They're not 3 beta males, but none of the 3 guys were leaders.
Right.
Like, meaning, I would say Kyrie is now.
Yeah.
But KD was the type of person. So you're referring to the book Relentless by Tim Grover, where he talks about coolers, closers, and cleaners.
Yes.
None of these guys were coolers. Like KD was a closer, definitely because he has so many physical advantages at the end of games where he would go after people. And I would say Kyrie at the time. I know he hit the big shot in the NBA Finals, but I would still say he was a closer.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like Harden wasn't even a closer.
Right.
Harden was a cleaner. Harden was a good player, but there was no clutchness really to Harden like those other 2 players. But the problem is when things go wrong, you had 3 guys who never took the blame on themselves.
Yes.
Chronically, the fault was the Oklahoma City Thunder,
Yep.
so KD had to go to Golden State.
Yeah.
The fault was with the Houston Rockets, so Harden's like, you have to trade me. It doesn't matter that James Harden is in strip clubs on his off days, eating fried food and doing all this crazy shit and drinking. It made no difference. It was not James Harden's fault.
If Vegas ever got an NBA team, that he
would die.
He's making his way here.
He would die.
He's like, I'm playing for Vegas.
And the same thing with Kyrie. It was Kyrie's burn. What was so crazy to me is, I'm not a Boston Celtics fan, but I absolutely understood the Boston Celtics not liking Kyrie Irving after he said he was going to re-sign with them.
Yeah.
And then he goes out there, he just misses days for whatever reason. I'm not even talking about the vaccine stuff. That means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Whatever his opinion. And by the way, we had another guy in Dallas do that too, Amari Cooper, which is what got him traded to the Browns. The situation was with Kyrie is like none of these guys were ever something went wrong. Now the accountability lies on us. There was no leader to do that. Unless it was it going to be Dinwiddie? Like who were they going to listen to that was going to make this happen?
Yeah.
It's ironic that Dinwiddie and Kyrie are on the same team now. When you think about it, remember they were talking shit about each other. Kyrie was talking about the future of the Nets, and he just forgot to mention Dinwiddie. The situation is because none of those guys were leaders. What I said is I have a prediction. I absolutely know this is the case. This will never work because anytime none of these guys are going to sacrifice in order to win. They're never going to sacrifice because what will happen is when someone gets hurt or whenever they lose, it will never be their fault. They will never take accountability for it. That's how when you know someone is a great player. Is because they're going to take accountability. And because none of these 3 players were plus defenders either, when the team would lose because they weren't rebounding, and that was a big problem with that Nets team with those 3 players, is they couldn't rebound and they were poor defenders. When that happened, they were all going to look to each other to be the defensive stopper, and that was never going to happen with those 3 guys, right?
Yeah.
Kyrie just because he's not big enough, James because he's not interested, and KD because he just not quick moving side. He's not a perimeter defender. He can block some shots for sure, but he's not a perimeter defender. And so that's what you saw with that whole situation.
They also weren't on the court, the 3 of them, that much.
I don't think it would have mattered. I really don't think it.
But the thing is, like, even though they had defensive issues, those 3 on the rare occasions they played together, it was like a supernova. Like, you can't stop. It was crazy.
If you're playing a regular season NBA game and you have 3 really good players, then that's like when they had Chris Mullin, Tim Hardaway, and Latrell Sprewell playing for the Warriors.
Nostalgic names.
Yeah,
there.
when they're playing for the Warriors, they could score, and then they got to the playoffs and nothing would work because
they clamped down defensively.
It's not that they clamped down defensively. For those of you who don't, I don't know if this is how there's no playoffs in La Liga, right? You guys just play a 20-game season or 30-game season.
Then you get to the Champions League and then knockout phases, and then
for sure. In NBA basketball, we have the regular season and then we have a 4-round playoffs and 7 game, for best of 7. And what happens is when we get to the playoffs, because the teams shorten their bench and because nobody plays back-to-backs anymore, back-to-back days, you can play your players more minutes. Because of that, teams are more locked in defensively, and because they're more locked in defensively, the game slows down. You don't get random fast breaks. When the game slows down, fast break players, young, very quick athletic players, quickly become humbled by players like Shaq and Kobe, like players like Michael Jordan, great individual players like that can score in the half court and that can defend, they slow the game down. When the game's slowed down, when the game is really fast and you see two young teams, they can't defend each other. And in the fast break, that's the most efficient way to score in NBA basketball. When you slow the game down, everyone's set, the defensive set, it becomes much more difficult because you got a 7-foot guy underneath the basket. Guys can switch on the perimeter. And so you want to try to avoid that. When in the NBA, when you see a lot of players that were really good in the full court, but then they weren't really good in the half court, like the Warriors team that I was mentioning before.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially what happened is these teams would get to the playoffs, and when they would, then you wouldn't see them play as well. This is one thing that also lends credence to Luka's situation is he's already the best half court player. Him or Jokic are the best half court players in the entire league.
Yeah.
And then so you see that with those guys with the Nets. And those guys were nobody. It was a situation where none of them would not want the final shot because they'd be insulted they weren't asked, and then none of them would want the final shot because they don't have that personality, except maybe KD now. But I do think like if it was Kyrie today, the way Kyrie acts today, when it's not like the whole Black Israelites, Earth is flat, let me burn sage, like today's Kyrie would have been. Like they may have had a chance to make that
So
work.
that's interesting because I was wrong about Kyrie working at Dallas because I
think a lot of people had an issue with it. Yeah.
I didn't think it would fail for basketball reasons necessarily. I just thought like you never know what you're going to get from him.
We all thought that.
Yeah. So what happened? Like, did he turn a corner? Did he turn a leaf? What's like?
So the first issue is the way Kyrie explained it is I'm around people I trust. And to Mark Cuban's credit, Mark Cuban asked him what charity. Kyrie Irving's part Native American, and he asked Kyrie like, "What charity do you want us to support?" And Mark Cuban got fully behind it and didn't judge Kyrie on any of his beliefs, and fully accepted him as a human. And Nico Harrison helped with that as well, the GM of the Mavericks. So Kyrie, for the first time, felt loved. He felt accepted. He felt, in some of his viewpoints, I'm not going to go into the reasons why, but some of his viewpoints work in Texas. If you guys can go look at his viewpoints, you'll understand what I mean.
Yeah,
but some of his viewpoints on the world, the people in Texas don't have a problem with. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And so when he got there, he just felt loved. He just did not have an issue with the situation that was going. Some of those same viewpoints don't work in Brooklyn, but they do work in Dallas. If you guys can figure out what those are. And so when he got there, he said he felt loved. And the other thing is that even for him, do you remember the lunacy when he wanted to get traded from Cleveland because he was like, LeBron, I want to be a star. LeBron's the star here. It's like maybe it was his father. I don't know who was giving this terrible advice.
Yeah.
So he leaves, and then later on, it was years later, he told LeBron, he goes, "Man, these kids are knuckleheads. Like, I didn't realize how good I had it with LeBron. Like, I didn't know it was like this." I think when he sees Luka play, and it's so blatantly obvious that he's playing with basketball Jesus.
Yeah.
And like, there's no argument. He's like, wow. Like, I think that demanded his respect. And I think the other thing is Luka as a ball handler, every ball handler in the NBA admires Kyrie Irving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Every ball handler, every point guard in the NBA,
they revere him.
They all revere Kyrie Irving. So Luka is now a fanboy of Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie Irving is witnessing the greatest, probably next to LeBron, the greatest thing he's ever seen. And so now he's hit me. So there's enough mutual respect to make it work. Plus, you have a society. Team players always say this: playing for the Mavericks is a really good situation. They have the best workout facilities, the best trainers. They spend the best money. They were way ahead of everyone else when it came to like some of these advanced metrics, and when it came to like even the seats on the bench are ergonomic. Like they're very, very, very professional when it comes to that. And I think when he gets there, that works. And then them trusting him to bring Klay. So the Klay Thompson situation was in large part because of Kyrie Irving. And the Kyrie Irving situation was in large part because of Nico Harrison and because of Luka being there. And Klay deciding to come was in large part because the Mavericks getting to the finals, because Luka's talent, and because Kyrie was friends with Klay Thompson. So you see all these pieces kind of coming together to hopefully spell out something better. He's going to win a championship at some point in his life. I don't see how that.
I would assume so. Yeah.
But I mean, that's another thing that I've seen that's just it's just really amazing to watch when I watch the Mavericks play. And then the other thing is, I don't think people understand how good Derek Lively is. I don't think they get it yet.
I think he went on the map last playoffs.
Yeah, but Derek Lively right now is a rim runner with an afro. That's all you see. Derek Lively, if he wanted to, could put the ball on the floor. Derek Lively could shoot the corner three. Derek Lively has so many more skills than but they just don't need him to do that right now. And Gafford is the pick of the whole thing. Remember what the other thing I was going to tell you before. Nico Harrison does this thing that I love. You can't really do this in the NFL, and I don't know if you can do this in La Liga, but he finds good, usable players on bad teams that don't need them. PJ Washington was in limbo. He was playing for the Charlotte Hornets. You guys know about the Charlotte Hornets? No one knows about the Charlotte Hornets. People forget. Yeah. Michael Jordan even sold his part of it. He owned it. Nobody knows about Charlotte Hornets. And then you see Gafford was playing for the Washington Wizards.
Wizards, yeah.
Just like this is Siberia. Like, no, but you watch this guy who was like getting a ton of rebounds and a ton of block shots, but he's playing for a garbage team. Nico Harrison did a great job of finding those really good pieces on really crappy teams and making early trades for them and looking for skill sets that match with Luka Doncic, which is being able to switch as a defender and being able to hit open shots or throw down lob dunks. And because he only did that, that's why this team is so good. And then the other situation is Kyrie grew up like admiring Jason Kidd. And Jason Kidd is his coach.
Yes.
And so there's this like mutual respect triangle that goes on there.
Makes sense,
where it's like Kidd can walk the walk. Kidd was an all NBA first team defender and led the league in assists and led the NBA certain years in triple doubles and won an NBA championship. Like he's got those skins to where, because that's what you need. You or I could go out there, coach the Mavericks, and be like, "Oh, guys, here's what we're gonna do. You guys are gonna stand on the corner. Luka, you're gonna get the ball,
like,
and then
off.
someone's gonna set a screen, and everybody else is gonna fuck off." And you'd be like, "Man, look at this. Kiyan is an incredible NBA coach. How did he figure this out? It's not that difficult to do. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if you have players that good, just shut the fuck up and just let them do whatever they want.
100%.
So that's not what they need Jason Kidd to do. What they need Jason Kidd to do is figure out a way to tell Kyrie when he's doing something wrong, but it's Kyrie. Like, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
People have gone to Kyrie the wrong way, and Kyrie shuts down for the entire season, and he burns sage, and he fucking talks about weird shit. Like, Kyrie has been shut down before. And the same, like, with Luka, not so much. Luka's always been a professional. But I think that's the issue. So I think the structure in place is really good. I think the Mavericks are going to have to find some other places to find scoring, and I don't know that the trade-off basically defense for offense. Derrick Jones Jr. was a tremendous defender. People don't recognize it. Obviously, he's one of the greatest leapers in the entire NBA.
Yeah.
But him leaving, I think he went to Portland. I forgot where Derrick Jones Jr. went. But Derrick Jones Jr. leaving, basically it was Derrick Jones Jr. and Klay Thompson was sort of a swap there. The problem is Derrick Jones, everyone was like, "Oh, Klay Thompson's way better than Derrick Jones Jr." He's a better three-point shooter, but is he as good a defender as him? And can he catch a full court open? Have you seen that three? Luka catches a rebound against San Antonio, throws the ball the full 94 feet.
Yeah.
Derrick Jones jumps outside the block, catches it, and dunks it. And that was happening regularly with Derrick Jones. So that's something that you've kind of lost. Is that trade-off worth it? Because when you look at these rosters, the Mavericks look like they got a little bit worse defensively and a little bit better offensively, but you needed a three-point shooter to pull you out of those doldrums when you were playing against Boston.
Yes.
Because against Boston, they would just turn into nothing.
Yeah.
They were in the wilderness offensively. It was so frustrating to watch, and what made it more demoralizing is they'd miss shots, and then whoever Luka was guarding would get called up, and he would just and then you'd see Tatum or Brown just blow by.
Yeah. I love what you said about Jason Kidd and the respect that they have for him, and sometimes you just need to get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah.
So you've read Phil Jackson's
11 Rings.
Yeah.
Holy crap, I love that book.
So the two most successful coaches in basketball history and football history, European football.
Yeah.
So Real Madrid's coach, Carlo Ancelotti.
Okay.
His whole thing is called Quiet Leadership. He has a book about it.
Yeah.
Very similar to Phil Jackson in that we're not going to come here and shove X's and O's down your throat.
Yeah.
We're managing the best players in the world. We're going to make sure we can just make this work collectively, right?
Yeah.
And Phil Jackson talks about this, and Tim Grover talks about, like, Phil Jackson's greatness was not about tactics, although he was great at that. It was really about how do we get all these egos to work, and we're not going to interfere. And it's genius. Like,
it's so funny because Phil Jackson, when you if you were watching basketball back then, he was one of the most petty, coaches you've ever seen, but
Yeah.
he taught Buddhism. It was so, and then while other guys were making him, studying X's and O's, he made the players read different books.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That was something that
Yeah.
Phil did. It was like he was enlightened and incredibly unenlightened at the same time.
Yeah.
It was like he came off kind of hypocritical sometimes, but he did understand, because he had an ego also, how to get the best out of these players. Tex Winter was the reason. Tex Winter and Jim Clements were the reason why they ran the triangle offense in Chicago. It wasn't because of Phil.
Right.
And defensively, everyone kind of ran the same defense back then, which was mug the shit out of anybody who gets underneath the basket and have some guy who's 7'2" stand there and try to block shots.
Right.
That was defense in the 1990s. That was the only defense you played.
Yeah.
You double off everyone. Nobody respects three-point shooters. There were no people back then, except for a few guys that were shooting 42, 43% from the league. Now everyone is. Now the 12th man on your bench, if it's Markieff Morris, will shoot 41% from the three-point line.
Yes.
It's a completely different league now.
Yes.
And then there was a hand check rule back then. You could literally put your hand on a guy. So it was a very different game. But reading, my favorite, the whole reason, if you guys ever want to read 11 Rings, the whole reason to read that book, it's a phenomenal book. But the chapter where he compares Michael Jordan to Kobe Bryant is worth the entire book. It is worth the entire book. He goes detail by detail on how Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were different.
Yes.
It is such a beautiful description.
Yes. Yeah.
Kobe was more flexible. Kobe was slightly bigger with bigger hands.
Yeah.
Michael was stronger. Michael could actually jump higher. It was really interesting the way he would do it. Kobe when he got locked in, was a good defender. Michael was probably the greatest perimeter defender of all time. There's a little difference like that. Kobe probably had better court vision, and Michael, there was just different things. But like Michael in the clutch, I don't think I've ever seen anybody. If you look at clutch numbers on certain players, people think it's like the best of all time is it's going to be guys like Ray Allen. It's going to be like Dirk. Dirk has some of the greatest clutch numbers I've ever seen. Like really, really good. Paul Pierce has some good ones. Kobe had some good ones. Not as good as those other guys, but it's really interesting when you see some of those numbers. Tim Duncan had some really good ones too. But it's just a really interesting thing with the way Phil Jackson would describe it and get the best out of his players. And you saw a little bit of that in Jason Kidd. But the problem with Jason Kidd, and I hope he's learned from this, is the failures that happened to him in Milwaukee and the failures that happened to him with the Nets were his fault. A lot of them were his fault. He wanted them to play a certain kind of defense, which really, really probably hurt them a little bit offensively. And he didn't want to take any credibility. He didn't want to take any blame when things went wrong. He would just sort of blame other people. And it's just not a good look. You can't play one kind of defense. You have to be able to switch it up. You can't play one kind of offense.
Yeah.
You have to be able to switch it up. And I think this version of Jason Kidd is way better. It's a lot smarter, although he was almost going to get fired last year. If they had not made the Gafford and if they had not made the Gafford and PJ Washington trade and then go on that run where they went like 18-2 to finish the season, Kidd was going to get fired. He was about to get fired. So it's just really interesting the way that whole thing works. But as far as dealing with Luka, like I think he's probably the right guy to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's play a quick game. Tim Grover, Relentless. You and I have read this book. As you know, double speed audiobooks, workouts. You can get through 1 million books a year.
Remind me again, cooler, closer, cleaner. Is that what we're going to ask about?
Yeah. So Tim Grover talks about coolers, closers, and cleaners. A cooler is someone, if you assign a job to them, they'll get it done, but they won't go like above and beyond.
Okay, so cooler is like, in leadership, they talk about the contender, the gladiator, the leader. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then a closer is someone who gets the job done. And then a cleaner is someone who doesn't care if you ask him to do it, doesn't care about anything. He just gets shit done constantly over and over and over again. He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't, he's...
And other people follow him because he leads by
He's a
example.
leader, right, yeah. I think Michael Jordan is probably the greatest cleaner in history of sports. I don't think there's anything... Michael Jordan, to me, is the most probably fascinating case study of any human in the past X amount of years.
I've read 2 books on him, and it was like some people would talk about him being manic all the time.
Yeah.
You remember he would play golf all night, or he'd play golf and then he'd play poker all night, and then he would go play a game.
Right.
One of his coaches was like, he's a manic depressive. Like, he's going to crash and this is going to come down. But he was like, he never crashed. Also, one of the other things I thought was interesting, Michael Jordan, this was his description, he had no insecurities. Not about his body, his look, his game. Like, he was like, the man was devoid of any insecurity whatsoever. And it was really interesting. I don't think he's like that now, but I think while he was playing, he was fully aware he was the best player in the world and one of the most famous people in the world.
Yeah. And so the cleaner, the closer,
Yeah.
and the cooler.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you which of these players I'm about to list
Uh-huh.
fit into which category.
Okay.
James Harden.
I mean, James Harden's a cooler at this point. I think he never at
his peak.
His peak, but he was never a clutch player. Do you remember all those games where it came to the end of the game and
Yeah.
he was like out of shape or whatever?
When it comes to the playoffs, not a great track record.
Cooler. Like there's no way. And one of the greatest coolers who's ever played. But he was a cooler. He is a looter and a riot sometimes. You play on bad teams and get a ton of points, assists, and rebounds, and there's just no accountability for what he did on defense. Definitely a cooler. I couldn't see him higher than that.
Dirk Nowitzki.
Dirk Nowitzki was he was a cleaner. And you know what? He was a cleaner or a closer. The reason why is his clutch numbers were really high, but also he did not take a ton of accountability on defense sometimes. And there were a lot of years where he didn't make it to the playoffs. And like he couldn't always put the team on his back. So while I do think he may singularly be the most unstoppable mismatch in the end of a game in the fourth quarter, shooting threes, like there's no way to guard a guy who's 7-1 with a fadeaway.
Yeah,
right?
impossible.
Look at Kevin. See Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
But I would probably say he's a closer, a cleaner, because he went to 2 finals. He didn't like tear people in half. I'm not going to put him in the same category as Michael Jordan. So I'd probably say even when he's one of my favorite players, he's probably a closer.
Embiid.
Embiid is a cooler. I mean, he's the ultimate cooler. Like I have not seen any clutchness in him at all. And when things get difficult, he takes games off. That is a cooler. Like Luka's. I mean, he's got to be a cleaner. Like you saw, it's not just that he does not remember that shot he hit against the Clippers. You remember? It's like the shot he in the bubble. He hits the shot against the Clippers in the bubble, and then later on when he puts Rudy Gobert in the spin cycle. Like I want you to consider, it's not just that he hit the shot over Rudy Gobert. He enjoyed humiliating him.
Yeah.
The cleaner is a psychopath. The cleaner like enjoys the cleaner is not just a function of skill, it's a function of schadenfreude.
Yes.
He enjoys your demise.
Yes.
He wants to see you suffer at his hands and will never be satisfied and continue to watch you suffer. Michael Jordan's another great example.
Of course, yeah.
He would make up slights to then destroy you and humiliate you. And because of that, he never turned it off. The guy I see doing that is Luka. Luka, he has the pettiness with who's the shooting guard for the Phoenix Suns? I was literally watching that clip. I literally was at a party with him the other day. What's his name?
Booker.
Devin Booker.
Yeah.
Like the pettiness to which he attacks Devin Booker.
Yes. Yeah.
The pettiness.
Yeah.
Like when guys don't like him, the way he just the pettiness to which he goes after the Stifle Tower, Rudy Gobert, the pettiness pettiness to which he goes after
so
him,
enjoyable
that
to watch.
is a cleaner.
Yeah.
It's like I don't just want to dominate you all the time. I am totally motivated by dominating you, and your lack of success, me beating you 15 times in a row, isn't enough. I need to watch you suffer and fail.
Yeah.
That is Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
That is Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Okay. That is Tim Duncan. Honestly, that is like ultimate viciousness. When you see that, that's what I would say about him.
Last one, LeBron James.
So this is a tough one because I've just seen too many times where LeBron's skill set is unmatched. As far as a combination of skill and athleticism, he's better than Michael Jordan. He's not better than Michael Jordan, though.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So like Michael Jordan could not switch on a center and guard him. Michael Jordan is never going to. I mean, he did lead the league in assists once, but like there are things that LeBron can do that nobody could do. LeBron is much closer to what I would say Magic was, where Magic was a closer that played with cleaners. Like he played with vicious animals that wanted to tear your heart out. And he was a floor. There's another thing. It's called the floor raiser or the ceiling raiser. Like you notice how bad teams will go get Chris Paul, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Chris Paul is a floor raiser.
Yes.
Chris Paul will take you from the bottom up here.
Yeah.
And then some guys are a ceiling raiser. A ceiling raiser is going to be like Luka, or like a guy comes onto your team and then he's the final piece. Rasheed Wallace, when he went to Detroit that one year, that's an example of a ceiling raiser. Now you know you can go to the top when you have this player. Another example would be Tom Brady when he goes to the Buccaneers. He's a ceiling raiser. He's going to take the Bucs had all great players all over the place. It's just Jameis Winston can't see 3 feet in front of him, and he led the league in interceptions. They get rid of Jameis Winston. They put in Tom Brady. They win a Super Bowl. Like that's the way it works.
Yeah.
What was the question again? About
LeBron cleaner.
So the thing with LeBron is, I don't know how you live down losing to the Mavericks in 2011. I just don't.
But losing that way.
Losing that way, not being able to work without the ball, I never felt. I mean, obviously, yeah, he went after Jason Terry. In subsequent years, he dunked on him when Jason Terry was with Boston.
Right.
But it was like the necessity to humiliate the others. LeBron is from a skill set standpoint. We've never seen a guy 6'9" that strong. To be able to play the way he is. We've never seen, like, he's a better rebounder than Michael. He's a better interior defender than Michael, probably on the par perimeter defender than Michael. He's a better passer than Michael. And then at the rim, he's more powerful than Michael. Michael is a better mid-range jump shooter than him, but he's a better mid-range jump shooter than anyone who's ever played basketball.
Yeah.
And in the clutch, Michael was just a better player than LeBron. And the reason why is because Michael went 6 for 6 and LeBron went 4 for 10 in the finals. And in every one of those finals, LeBron is also the best player in the finals and goes 4 for 10. So
yeah.
I think the brutality that was necessary for him to go destroy the Mavericks, that's prime LeBron. 2011, 2010, or 2011, 2012, 2013 LeBron is Superman. We are looking at an alien species on the court. Look at some of those highlights of LeBron James back then. Like prime Sean Kemp level athleticism in Magic Johnson's body with Michael Jordan's handle. Like he's everything at this point. And for him to not win that 2011 one didn't make any sense. And then later on, we're dealing with like kind of a depleted Tim Duncan, and you lose again in 2013. I'm sorry, 2014.
Yeah.
You lose to that team. To me, and you know, congratulations to the Heat for going to the finals in the bubble. But that team, of all the teams LeBron lost to in the finals, that Heat team was the worst, I think, of any team LeBron played in the finals. And that for them, because they had Jimmy, you know, and a bunch of injuries.
Jimmy's probably a cleaner. Like
Jimmy is
in terms of showing up.
Jimmy's a cleaner. Yeah. It's just Jimmy isn't as good as them.
That's
but
right.
Jimmy is a cleaner.
Yeah.
Dude, him put like humiliating Karl Anthony Towns to the point where he was crying in practice. Have you ever seen this story?
It's incredible.
You guys want to see an incredible who's the point guard for that team? He's got his own podcast now. He's super funny. I can't remember. I love this kid, watching this kid play. I forgot what his name is. But he was talking about the story. Jimmy did that with a Rolex on. He humiliated Karl Anthony Towns. And then afterwards, when he played for Philadelphia, Embiid loved Jimmy. Embiid wanted them to keep Jimmy. It's like, and then, you know, obviously you see the situation that happened. Who'd they keep instead? Tobias Harris. It's like, you kept Tobias Harris over me?
That was a huge mistake.
Over me?
Yeah.
It wasn't just a mistake. It's that
they
Jimmy
needed somebody like
But
Jimmy.
it's the pettiness. Yeah. Jimmy was so petty, ownership didn't want him, and Tobias Harris was better on a commercial.
Yeah.
Tobias Harris is a good player.
Yeah.
But like Jimmy Butler, if like today, a healthy Jimmy Butler, if you put him on the Mavericks, they're winning a championship. Yeah. And Jimmy Butler's taking the final shot.
Yes.
This man is like, this is the part that I want to express to you when I talk about this. Full and complete commitment to excellence combined with zero fear in the closing seconds, combined with an incredible level of hate and pettiness towards your opponent. That is a cleaner.
Yeah.
It's the pettiness.
Yeah.
It's the pettiness that LeBron misses, that KD misses, and that Dirk misses.
Yeah.
They don't have the ultimate pettiness to humiliate. Even KD. I'm not Kevin. Kevin Garnett. KG.
Yeah.
Even KG is the same kind of situation.
Yeah.
Although Kevin Garnett did not have the offensive skill set to take over games in the fourth quarter like these other guys. But yeah.
But there's a mentality that he had.
There's a mentality.
Yeah.
But you have to, like, in basketball, in order to be a cleaner, you have to be an offensive player. You can't really be Dikembe Mutombo can't be a cleaner.
Yeah.
Because there's too many shots on the court he can't affect.
Yeah.
Right? The cleaner is like, it's like the idea that I'm not going to get the ball is so outside of my reality, and the idea that I'm not going to score is so outside my reality.
Yeah.
And when I score, I'm going to look at you and tell you to go fuck yourself, and I had sex with your wife last night.
Yeah.
And I'm going to feel good about it. And then afterwards, if I miss the shot, me missing the shot is so outside my reality that I forgot it even happened.
That might be
That
the
is a
greatest
cleaner.
quote in Managing Madrid podcast history.
That is the cleaner mentality. That guy. It is the
Yeah.
pettiness and the total disdain and disrespect for the opponent for even trying to guard you. That is where Michael Jordan sits apart from LeBron James.
I wanted to wrap with this. So this has been on my mind for a while, and you know this maybe better than anyone in terms of social media, how to use it, the direction it's headed. One of the things that has kind of bothered me in the last little bit is that I'm not sure the media cycle, sports media. We'll focus on sports media in this case. I'm not sure it rewards the right people.
Sure.
So what I mean by that is, like, ESPN recently laid off, in my opinion, the greatest basketball analyst I've ever seen, which is Zach Lowe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the guy is a genius. The way he breaks down the game, talks about it tactically, storytells, like his podcast is amazing. And of course, the big talking heads like Skip Bayless are just rewarded for streaming into the microphone.
Yeah.
And I guess where I'm going with is
like
this.
you and I know more about basketball than Skip Bayless. Like that's the problem. That's like
a
Skip
given,
Bayless does
yeah.
no homework at all.
Right.
He like the thing is, I don't think Skip Bayless is a racist person, but I do think he plays on race in order to try to rile up people to hate him so
Right.
much. And he says ridiculous things. Like I've never seen someone be that famous who's that disingenuous. Oh, I'm sorry. Other than the Harris campaign, I've never seen someone be that disingenuous who's that famous, where they're just literally saying things that they don't even mean.
Right.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. To be honest, like I can't really complain too much because I get a lot of clicks too if I say something that's a little bit. Ty Lopez put this really well, I think, recently on Instagram, where he said the most viral things are the things that 50% of the population will disagree with and 50% will argue with, which is 100% true.
Dan Kennedy has a great book about this, about closing from stage. I do this too. He makes the most money when he leaves the stage and half the audience hates him.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I do the same. I figured out a way to make everyone hate me. I figured out a way to do
Well, so the interesting thing about you is that, so like I will look at the clips you post on social media and I understand why you post them, but because I know you, I'm like, no, man, the most interesting shit about Michael is the books he reads, the business mind that he has. All this stuff, I'm sure, gets you a lot of new customers and clients. But I'm like, I personally don't like it because I'm like, I know behind the scenes that you're like this genius, right? And so I've learned a lot from you.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I guess my point is this: where is all of this headed? Should we be worried about it? Should we be worried about attention spans or analysis or in-depth conversations?
If Zach Lowe hired me to be his consultant, he would make more money than he would ever have made with ESPN.
Right.
Zach Lowe would have a Substack. Zach Lowe would have his own podcast that would be very inexpensive for him to produce.
Yeah.
It would go up on. He already has name recognition. He would still be able to do collaborations with Brian Windhorst. They already do collaborations right now. Zach Lowe would be a guest on other people's podcasts. My good friend Jim Jackson just started his podcast. I recommend all of you guys watch it. It's a really good podcast. Zach Lowe would still have the ability to make money. So the thing is, we're looking at it the wrong way. We're looking at, like, ESPN is holding on to the rope as hard as they can,
right?
And they're putting all their money in one basket. We know whether Skip Bayless or whoever it is. You saw Stephen A. Smith, by the way. He's on Fox News. I don't know if you guys saw that. He just started doing that.
Yeah.
What's happened is legacy media is holding on to the rope as hard as they can, and they're trying to make something work. The best thing that ever happened to Zach Lowe was getting fired from ESPN.
You think so?
Yeah, because he knows what he's doing. And also, now here's the other thing. I can criticize certain people, and like if you think about, like, I love listening. If Tom Brady had a podcast, he would be able to say things he can't say working for CBS.
Yes, that's true.
There's certain things he can't do that he would be able to. Is he on CBS? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe is he on Fox? No, I think he's on Fox. He's the A team on Fox. Yeah, that's right. And so there's certain things he can't get away with. Same thing with ESPN. There's certain topics that they can't go into. They can't get political, stuff like that you can do on your own. Zach Lowe is going to be able to be more of himself. I'm sure probably at this point he may feel a little bit of uncertainty, but I guarantee you the moment people found out he got fired, Barstool sent him an offer. He probably got an offer from a bunch of different places. And if he went just totally on his own, he could make money from Patreon. He could make money from subscription services on Spotify. He could do a subscription service on YouTube. There's so many ways he can make money. And probably he'd 10x his income. What's happened is ESPN is a monolith and is a battleship, and they can't turn fast enough to keep up with the times. So they're going to start selling off their pieces piecemeal, and the individual people, like Brian Windhorst is a great example. Like, he doesn't need anyone to like help him with his show. I still listen to his show all the time.
Right.
And Pro Football Focus is another great example. Pro Football Focus is closer to the truth when it comes to professional NFL football than anyone else I've listened to. And it's not super exciting. It's just they get it right more than anyone else. I don't think it's something that I'd have to worry about. I was thought about it too. I was like, man, Barstool Sports, that'd be incredible. It's like, I'm friends with Patrick Bet-David. I was like, why don't the Valuetainment should hire me? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I'm actually way better off like doing it like this. You get money from ads on YouTube. You can run meta ads back to your show. Like, there's all these different ways you can do it. It's confusing and scary in the beginning. But again, I would introduce Zach Lowe to I don't know, Shar Modell, who's my content manager, or Cole Gordon, or numerous other guys, and they would literally turn his business around. He'd work fewer hours and make more money like that. So we don't have to feel sorry for these guys,
right?
Because Zach Lowe's talented. He doesn't have to worry about it. If I'm trying to think of another guy who just really does his homework. Mel Kiper for the NFL, who does the draft for the NFL. Mel Kiper he does have his own podcast that has no affiliation to any channel. He's going to crush because the work is there. There's one podcast I listened to about the NFL cap, super boring. People would fall asleep. I love listening to this cap. I love the NFL salary cap and the NBA salary cap are so fascinating to me, and I can't explain why. I love them. And and when I listen to his show, it's so fascinating the way he does those things. If you have a good enough talent, you can you'll rise to the top. It'll take a while. Now
you have to know what to do basically, and that I actually am kind of worried for Zach because he's a bit of a dinosaur in that sense. I hope he has the right guidance to actually do Mark Stein. Does a great. He's a Dallas guy.
Yeah.
He has his own Substack. He has.
So Mark Stein has a Substack, and Mark Stein goes on Sports Radio 13. The Ticket. They'll interview him. My favorite, I cut my teeth at Sports Radio 1310 The Ticket in Dallas, Texas. Back in 94, 95, I worked there. And when I was there, it was the craziest thing. There's no sports radio station in America that has a larger market share of its community than Sports Radio 1310. They've won multiple Marconis, which is the best sports radio station in the United States. And it's nothing but jokes and wacky shit. And they talk about, all kind where they take dumps and what they do as a dad and whether or not this girl is hot. It's not quite to the level of Barstool Sports level of immaturity, but it's kind of on the same page. And that kind of content is able to pivot. You're able to do that. ESPN can never pivot. ESPN can never take any political stand. ESPN is owned by Disney. And ESPN is always going to have a sprinkle of wokeness. ESPN is I'm going to be waiting for the next NFL highlight, and I'm going to watch the New York Liberty playing the Minnesota Lynx, and I'm I don't really want to see this highlight right now. But I have to. It's okay, women's tennis. Can you put that on another channel? Can I want to watch NBA basketball? I'm sorry, I'm closed-minded, but that's what I want to watch.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And so, listen, if the woman dunks on the man, show me that. I want to see that clip for sure.
Yeah.
But there's always a level of progressiveness and wokeness in ESPN. And so I think because of this monolithic battleship, they're not ever going to be able to turn quick enough. And eventually you're going to see them lose in relevancy, very similar to the way you see MSNBC, CNN, and Fox. They've lost a significant relevancy. I don't know if you guys saw, PBD beat all of them. Patrick Bet-David's podcast beat everyone streaming on YouTube. So
whereas if PBD had a job at argument's sake for ESPN, he wouldn't be PBD anymore.
He couldn't say PBD could not say 80% of the things he says if he was on ESPN. That would be a significant
I think
issue.
that's the biggest case for it being a good thing for Zach Lowe being let go, for example. I've had people ask me your dream must be to work for Real Madrid, and I'm fuck no. I've seen people who work for Real Madrid, their contracts, it literally says in their contract the word exaggerated bias. You can never criticize. You must be unbelievably biased.
So let me ask you, did you see Jerry Jones cussing out those reporters?
No.
Okay, so Jerry Jones goes on. He has a station. He does 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. I know I live in Las Vegas. I'm obsessed with Dallas media. Dallas sports. They are the ones who carry the Cowboy games, and he has the three guys who host the show, and they're asking him questions, legitimate questions. For those of you who don't know, Jerry Jones, if you look up Dunning-Kruger effect in the dictionary, it's just a picture of Jerry Jones, a guy who made a lot of money and thinks he knows how to run a football team. He is totally clueless when it comes to running a football team. And he has screwed up so many things with the Dallas Cowboys. They have not made it to the conference finals in 30 years, and he is the first, second, and third reason why that is the case. Let me be unequivocal about that. Just in unbelievable levels.
And he's still there, right?
He's 82 years old, and he's still running the team.
Crazy.
He's a couple months older, I think, than Joe Biden. So, the thing is, or younger, I can't remember, but they're about the same age.
Right.
The thing about it is that Jerry was on there, and they asked him legitimate questions. You didn't sign a second defensive tackle. You didn't sign a second wide receiver, and there's nothing on this team resembling a running back. Jerry, could you done something a little bit different, like signing Dak Prescott to the largest deal in NFL history at the beginning of free agency instead of the end? And he goes, listen, I'm not on here. I'll get somebody else to ask me these questions. He said, I will get someone else on here to ask me these questions. Because those guys work for the team. And Jerry threatened their job. And then when another reporter asked him about it the same day, he doubled down on what he said. So I totally understand. There's this lack of You should look up the video. It was it made headlines all over the place. And it's really funny, and I know we're kind of off topic here, but Jerry Jones was the inspiration for Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, because he was always going to play second fiddle to Jerry Jones. Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavericks, Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. Because he was always going to play second fiddle, he needed to be the one who made the trades and the decisions and made so many. It was Nick Van Exel after Antoine Walker, after Antoine Jameson, after Vince Carter, after Chris Kaman, after Keith Van Horn. It's just one guy after. Notice all the guys I just named, like high draft picks, can't play a lick of defense, can all shoot the three. Like all of them were the same player
and
over and over. And because Cuban, the same thing with Dunning-Kruger effect. Congratulations to Mark Cuban for swindling Yahoo out of $5.3 billion. Congratulations on that. Like the rest of it, other than like Shark Tank was pretty cool, although he said he lost money on every single deal he agreed to on there.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is.
That's crazy.
But here's the other thing. I know this is way off topic. We all know why he sold to the Adelsons, right?
I mean, I don't.
He's running for president.
You think?
I don't.
He's been going at Elon on Twitter quite a bit.
He's running for president. He is trying to be like the left. Now, the thing that Mark Cuban did where he tried to create generic medications to bring down prescription prices, I give him 2 thumbs up for that. But why are you doing that? Because that's not a winning business model. You're doing that because when you run for presidency and people talk about an opioid crisis and overprescription of medication and making healthcare too expensive, he actually created a solution. You're doing that because you run for president. You're selling a team that you love. You're selling 73% of a team you love to get $3.5 billion out of it. You're doing that because you're running for president.
Interesting.
Mark Cuban is running for president.
Interesting.
And he's going to run as a Democrat. I'm going to tell you unequivocally, we're going to play this in 3.5 years when he announces. It'll probably be 2 years from now he'll announce. But he sees himself as an apprentice-level celebrity. So because of that, he's like, I can take on, but he won't be taking on Donald Trump. He'll be taking on J.D. Vance. But like that's when we see that happen. Just remember, like when he sold the team, I was like, oh, he's not in charge anymore, and he's definitely running for president.
We'll bookmark this. Interesting.
Who needs $3 billion? Like, I'm not saying the guy's worth $5 billion and he just needed another $3 billion. Remember, he bought the Mavericks for $285 million, and he's worth $5 billion. That was like, I'm not saying it's chump change, but it didn't break him to do that. Now he has, the man's probably worth $8 or $9 billion. He's almost as wealthy as Jerry Jones at this point. Like he could easily run for president. And if he so I think that's where we're going to see next. And we're going to see Luka just trying to figure out what to do here. Like who's he?
Right. But
how funny would that be?
But isn't Cuban like completely out of the Mavericks organization?
No,
like,
not completely.
Okay.
So Cuban still, he deals with so because the Adelsons don't know so it's Sheldon Adelson's wife's, so it's his son-in-law who's the team governor now. By the way, there are no team owners in the NBA anymore. They don't like the idea of a white owner owning a team full of black people, so they don't use that term anymore. They're called governors. There are no NBA owners anymore. They're called governors now.
Okay, noted.
Yeah, the NFL still has owners. The baseball still has owners, and the NBA, it's governors. Look it up if you don't believe me.
Okay.
So he is the new governor, which is I believe Sheldon Adelson's son-in-law. There were a few things he didn't understand about the team. He's basically there for the finances and let Nico Harrison make all the basketball decisions. Mark Cuban was there to kind of translate. And Mark Cuban still does things where he's like trying. So you can't watch the Mavericks on local television in Dallas for some. I don't want to go into the reason. It has to do with Bally Sports and all this stuff. But he's working on a way of building an app so they can watch it. There's still a bunch of stuff he does for the team, and he has some input. But Nico Harrison makes the basketball decisions. And I forget the guy's name, the Adelson son-in-law. He's the governor of the team who signs all the checks. So Cuban is a figurehead, very similar to a way of like if I'm trying to think of an example. If Tom Brady went back to the Patriots and he was like the figurehead of the way, it would be something similar to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Listen, man, this was a fucking blast.
I appreciate it.
We're gonna hoop this week.
Tomorrow night we can go hoop.
I've always wanted to test my skills
It's
against.
either Tuesday or Wednesday we can go hoop.
Okay.
What day you're leaving? Thursday?
Thursday.
Definitely. We'll talk. There's the guy staying with me is also named Kiyan. We'll talk to him. He's setting it up for all of us to go play basketball together.
Your bucket list at home. Did you have Real Madrid podcast appearance on it?
For sure. Like getting on. Like I want to learn more about soccer. Honestly, I really enjoy. I like watching the highlights. It's hard for me to watch the whole thing, but the environment you have, we don't have that in America other than college football.
You mean the fan culture, like
your fan culture, but you have this hooligan thing we don't have in the United States, except in places like Boston and Philadelphia and New York. they have hooligans. Like literally there's acts of violence that happen afterwards. You guys have that a little bit more in European football than we have in the United States. And college football, like the way they express themselves, we have American college football. In Europe, you guys don't like those, like the Oxford Screaming Eagles. Like no one gives a shit about your universities like we do.
Right.
Whereas in this country, people actually make decisions on what university to go to based on how good the football team.
Right.
I know I did. Hook 'em horns. I'm a Longhorn. So that's we do that here, and other places don't do that. We have our football team generates billions of dollars. Our college football team.
Yeah, it's nuts.
That's not. There's no semblance of that in Canada or Mexico or anywhere in Europe. That's just a unique thing. But if you go to the games, it feels like a college, a European football atmosphere.
Listen, I know you have an amazing thing going on here in Vegas.
Yeah.
Every day you wake up, it's a fucking blast.
Yeah.
One time in your life, come over to Madrid.
Oh, of course.
And just experience like 2 hours outside, 2 hours before the game outside the stadium on a big game.
Yeah.
The flares, like you can't move. It's
Yeah.
like sardines, like people going ape shit.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's
Let me
fun.
ask you something. The NFL's been playing games over there. Have you paid any attention to them? They're playing a game like every weekend
Not
over
yet,
in Europe.
but it's inevitable. So Real Madrid just renovated their stadium.
Yeah.
The new Bernabeu. They're planning on having UFC fights.
Yeah.
It might be the biggest UFC fight in terms of attendance. I think will eventually be there.
Yeah, that sounds great.
NFL will be there soon.
Because they're doing Dusseldorf, Berlin. They're doing London. I didn't know if they were in Barcelona yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
No. But it's in the works.
The NFL is going to have one game every week in Europe from now on.
That's crazy.
Yeah, up until like the last couple of weeks. So every week they do London or Germany or something like that. Yeah.
That's a whole different podcast because that in itself is really interesting because La Liga wants it come here once a year. And there is huge opposition to that.
Wow. Really? Over there?
In Spain.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like, we want to see our team.
Yeah.
We're not going all the way to the U.S.
Yeah.
Like, who cares about the Americans? Like, don't fuck marketing.
When you guys watch American football, does it seem interesting to you, or does it just seem chaotic, or what? I'm always interested. Like, to me, I can't imagine anything more exciting than watch a guy on a flea flicker throw an 80-yard touchdown pass because there's no other sport like that.
I just think how action packed it is.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating
Yeah.
because in European football, it's not nonstop action, as you know. Like,
well, I
that's
mean,
why-
American football isn't either, but you get to run at each other going
Right.
22 miles an hour. You have people blowing each other up consistently, play after play, and there's hundreds of plays per game. And I'm just always interested in like what Europeans actually thought of American football.
The dude who jumped over the guy recently.
Yeah,
in the
you're talking about
NFL,
Saquon Barkley did a backwards jump.
that definitely made it to news in Europe. Like that was like, what is this? We've never seen this before.
Yeah. I just like I know rugby's popular over there, and I like rugby. It's cool,
Yeah.
but you can't block in rugby. That's it. Like you can block in American football. Just imagine if you're playing in La Liga, but the guys in front of you, so you're a midfielder, and the strikers and the guy in front of the guy in front of you can just like take the guys out at the knees, can jump at their knees, and then you go at the goalie and you can run the goalie over.
Right.
That's American football.
Yeah.
I don't understand how people don't love this sport.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to deny that it's
Like
wildly
the
popular.
lightest offensive lineman in the NFL is like 190 kilos. The lightest one. These are monsters, like brutal.
These guys are giants.
It's like a UFC fight happening the whole game. It's incredible to watch. I just don't know. I've just never understood because in Europe, you guys love basketball. I love basketball.
Yeah.
Right. You guys like NBA basketball. In China, they love NBA basketball. I've just never understood why American football just didn't catch on.
I don't know
everywhere else.
either because the numbers here, like in North America, are insane.
Yeah.
Like soccer, at least you get the global population, and that's why. But like here, like the numbers for like one continent that watches it only is unbelievable.
And the Super Bowl, we got Jay-Z, but you guys got Drake.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But bro, dark times for Drake fans. Yeah. It's not a good time for us.
That's crazy.
Listen, man.
Thank you,
It's
man. I'm glad
been
you
an
came out
absolute
here.
pleasure. Thank you, Michael Sartain. Tell everyone where they can find your work.
You go to Michael Sartain on Instagram, and you can find I'm a performance coach. For some of you, probably really confused, like who he's been talking to this whole time.
Yeah.
I used to work in sports radio, but I'm a performance coach. I basically teach men to level up their networking, communication, leadership, and dating. If you can't replace your social circle, your dating life, or your job in 15 minutes, you don't have enough abundance. It's my job to give you that level of abundance. To give you what we call local celebrity and elite networks, where I don't want you to be like a Cristiano Ronaldo 10 out of 10 level famous, but I'd like you to be a 1 or a 2 to wherever you go, you get hired immediately. Every hot girl knows your face, and every time you walk into a restaurant or nightclub, the manager comes out and greets you. That's possible for everyone
Yeah.
who's listening to me right now, and your life is so much easier when you do that. Just you're able. I'm speaking at a Ty Lopez event next month, and it's like the opportunities I get from that. But it wasn't that hard. It was just a little bit of networking that I teach other people to do, and it's an incredible. And also we study evolutionary psychology in the program, so that's what my course is.
Love it. Everyone go follow Michael Sartain.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And hey, man, I think this is the first of many.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, first of many.
All right, beautiful.
All right, appreciate